When Elsa Schenkel came of age, there were no shortage of suitors. Her family was rich and respected, and could trace back their family tree for 8 generations. Moreover, Elsa was a beauty, with hair cascading onto her shoulders like rays of sunshine, and cheeks the same red hue of the apples in autumn, and eyes a cool, beautiful blue like the Swiss lakes. But at Elsa's first ball, she seemed to pay no attention to all of the men gathered there, hoping to have the first dance with her, even though there were military officers resplendent in their uniforms with shiny brass buttons, and noblemen of rank, princes and barons too. But Elsa Schenkel could barely manage a smile to the jokes and gossip they whispered in her ear as each had their dance with her, her eyes trailing out of the window at the autumn leaves falling down outside. Her parents assumed it was probably just nerves, but as the season passed and the balls came and went, and Elsa showed no interest as to who might be there or even what she might wear, they decided to sit down and have a talk with her. They impressed upon her how lucky she was to be courted by so many illustrious and distinguished men. They reminded her that her looks, they wouldn't last forever. And finally, they hinted it was hardly fair to expect them to support her until she became an old maid. Elsa listened to her parents quietly and respectfully, and then informed them that she would be leaving in the morning to join a convent, to become a nun and dedicate her life to God. Her mother fainted at once on the carpet, while her father began to shout at her, in turns threatening her, insulting her, and finally begging her to get married, if only for the sake of her poor mother, who even now sat in the corner of the room with smelling salts in one hand and a glass of sherry in the other, which she filled with her tears as fast as she could drink from it. But when Elsa said her decision was final, her father said, "Well, that's just fine then. If she wanted to go and become a slut of Christ, that was her business, but she was no daughter of his." A declaration that sent his wife fainting once again. Elsa Schenkel was received at the convent some 20 kilometers away the next day by the Mother Superior with grim satisfaction. For the nuns, to be joined here at the convent in a life of renunciation by such an evident beauty was proof that they had all chosen wisely to forsake the external evil world, where every delight was just a sin in the making, and where the only safe place from the temptations of Lucifer was here, behind the high brick walls of the convent. Elsa took her vows and began to fulfill the duties expected of her as a nun, preparing the small bland meals that kept her just on the right side of starvation, rising before dawn each day to pray and meditate. And yet it seemed that she missed some of the necessary pessimism and joylessness expected of a nun. Instead, Elsa walked around the place smiling and singing to herself with flushed cheeks and sparkling eyes. On one occasion, she was even caught dancing in the moonlight in the garden. The Mother Superior warned her that such behaviour was more appropriate to a brothel than a nunnery. Had she forgotten where she was? If she didn't know better, the Mother Superior thought to herself, she would have sworn the young girl was in love, which was closer to the truth than she might have imagined. So who was the lucky man? Did perfumed envelopes find their way through the gates of the convent? to be trusted to faithful messengers, to be slid under the cell door where Elsa Schenkel would take them and read them feverishly by candlelight? Or did some bold youth scale the walls to sing ballads to her at midnight whilst everyone else was asleep? No. The fact was that Elsa Schenkel had felt loved, cherished, adored for as long as she could remember. Even as a child, when the wind would blow other people's hair into their faces, she felt that it caressed her cheeks with all the tenderness of a lover. When it rained, other people ran for shelter, but she'd stand out there in the middle of it, feeling the raindrops course down her body passionately. And when the sun came out, it was like being held in the warm embrace of a lover. If she'd been a bit more poetic, perhaps she might have become a great mystic, experiencing the love of God in all things, at all times. But she was convinced it was a bit more personal than that. Surely an all-knowing, all-powerful God had better things to do than drop cherries into her pockets when she passed below the cherry trees. And why didn't he send songbirds to sing on the windowsill of everybody each morning like he did to hers? With the passing of the years, Elsa's beauty refused to fade, and at 30, much to the annoyance of the other nuns, she looked as lovely as she had done at 20. And so it might be with anybody who woke up every day with their heart pulsing in love. In spring, she'd awaken and pull back the curtains to find that the trees had left thick layers of blossom upon her windowsill. In the summertime, the birds gathered at dawn, crowding onto the ledge to sing symphonies to her. In the autumn, she'd open the window and the trees would bend their branches closer to offer her fruit. And in the winter, she'd awaken to find works of art traced in frost upon the window panes themselves. As her beauty refused to fade, and the light of her love marked her apart from the others, she began to be seen with a grudging admiration, and finally, open respect, as the other nuns mistook her happiness for a kind of holiness. It was no surprise then that when the Mother Superior finally died, Elsa, at the age of 40, was voted to take her place. All she had to say to the other nuns by way of advice was to follow what they loved. And so the convent, which had been a place of severity, regret and tears, soon became a house of sunshine and song. Elsa was beloved by all the younger sisters, who feared for her safety and begged her not to go walking in the fields during the thunderstorms of late summer. But of course Elsa went anyway, listening to the thunder boom her name out in the sky, and the lightning would set trees on flame to either side of her as she walked. But it may be that the human heart is not made to withstand such intense passion. And so, only at the age of 51, as Elsa was in her garden one day, smelling the flowers which opened and gave forth their scent only for her, her heart gave way, and she collapsed to the ground. And the other nuns came running, screaming for buckets of water, or for someone to go and get a doctor. But Elsa gave a final sigh of contentment as she awaited the veil to be lifted on the mystery of the love that had been with her entire life. She felt her spirit rise up into the air, and she gazed down upon her tired old body surrounded by wailing nuns. And then she became aware of another presence by her side. A swirling cloud of golden particles that moved closer and then mingled with her essence. And all at once, she understood everything. She learned that there are spirits that when they die do not leave this world, but stay here, watching the living. And one of these had seen her as a young girl and fallen so deeply in love that he had waited a lifetime for her to join him. Now, she understood, the world itself could be the playground for their love. And so the story of Elsa Schenkel and the love of her life continues to this day. When he comes down as rain, she is the earth soaking him up. She becomes a wind blowing through the forest when he has become the trees. Her rays of sun melt his drifts of snow, and his waves caress her shores of sand all across the world in every moment. The greatest story of love is forever being told all around us.